the Niagara Escarpment. Hundreds of miles of breathtaking landscape. An ancient wall of rock, standing strong against the powerful forces of time. It brands the Great Lakes region, from Lake Ontario to Lake Michigan. A captivating part of the world that tells magical stories of age-old tropical coral reefs, colossal glaciers, and haunting First Nations lore. Epic, enchanting, and everlasting. The Niagara Escarpment is a true geological masterpiece. The Niagara Escarpment, an ancient meandering cliff, 725 kilometers long. At its highest point, more than 500 meters. The escarpment weaves its way through the Great Lakes region, in the heart of central North America. Stretching from upstate New York on the south shore of Lake Ontario, northwest through the Canadian province of Ontario, it fringes Lake Huron and Lake Michigan, and trails off just past Green Bay, Wisconsin. In its present state, the Niagara Escarpment is one of the geological gems of North America. But there is no question that the crown jewel of the escarpment itself is Niagara Falls. A true phenomenon of the natural world. It straddles the border between Canada and the United States and is part of the Niagara River, a 58-kilometer waterway that connects Lake Erie to Lake Ontario. The water from 4 of the 5 Great Lakes passes through here, on its way to Lake Ontario and beyond. From north to south, the river features an elevation drop of 100 meters. More than half the drop in elevation happens right here. The crest line of these falls covers only half a kilometer of the Niagara Escarpment's 724 kilometers. Yet the impact is so dramatic, it has become one of the most popular tourist destinations in North America. It is the only section of the escarpment that most will ever see. Its ancient geological history and composition is no different than any other part of the escarpment. Except for one thing: water. More than 170,000 cubic meters of water. That's the total combined volume that goes over the crest lines of the American and Canadian falls every minute. More than the volume of an Olympic-sized swimming pool every second. Most comes over this crest on the Canadian side. Horseshoe Falls, named for its shape. It is 52 meters high with a crestline 670 meters wide. Niagara Falls was born about 12,000 years ago, when water released from melting glaciers poured into what is now the Niagara River. Today, water from the river hurls over the edge of the escarpment at a speed of about 10 meters per second. The level of erosion that has occurred here is far greater than at any other point on the escarpment. 12,000 years ago, Niagara Falls was 11 kilometers downriver from where it is now. Around the turn of the century, the rate of the fall's erosion was just over 1 meter each year. Today, it's been artificially reduced to less than 1/3 of a meter per year on the Canadian Falls. The reason for this man-made intervention is that this part of the escarpment is more than just a pretty picture. In addition to precious tourist dollars, Niagara Falls generates valuable hydroelectric power, a resource worth preserving. There is a small portion of the Horseshoe Falls on the American side, along with 2 more distinct sections of the falls. At 17 meters wide, the Bridal Veil Falls is the smallest section, named for its unmistakable resemblance to a bridal veil. On the other side of this precarious piece of land is the American Falls, a much larger section of the falls that connects to Prospect Point in New York State. It is 55 meters high. Its crestline is 330 meters wide. Perhaps the most memorable human intervention in the history of Niagara Falls happened here. In 1931 and 1954, sections of rock fell to the bottom of the American Falls. Fears grew that this section of the falls would soon erode, crumbling into a series of unsightly rapids, and in the process, dealing a huge blow to the local economy. In 1969, a team from the U.S. Army was called upon to actually stop the American Falls completely. And they did it. The Army built a 180-meter dam from about 30,000 tons of rock to divert the flow of water. The result was a truly bizarre sight. The dolomite-capped portion of the Niagara Escarpment was naked for all to see. With the giant tap shut off, Army personnel cleared some of the fallen rock from the base of the falls to improve its appearance. Engineers mechanically bolted some faults on the escarpment to prevent further erosion. After they had collected as much research and data as they could, the dam was removed in November of the same year. Today, 280,000 liters per second flow over the crest. It's a staggering amount, yet it represents just 10% of the total amount of water flowing over the entire falls. In all its glory, Niagara Falls is spectacular, and the escarpment on which it is found is one of the most beautiful geological marvels on the continent and the planet. Its ancient origins begin underwater.
To understand the Niagara Escarpment, we have to understand it on a very long time scale, a geological time scale.
For millions of years, the crust under the Michigan Basin was relatively stable, gently warping to form a giant basin about 770 kilometers across.
During the Silurian period, which was 450 million years ago, that large basin was a large inland sea. So right now, if we were here 450 million years ago, we'd have to be anchored in a boat to have this conversation.
The Silurian period occurred 200 million years before dinosaurs roamed the Earth. Animals with backbones were only just appearing in the oceans. This vast, calm inland sea is referred to by geologists as the Michigan Basin. It represents a rare, geologically peaceful time for this part of the planet.
The geologic history of Canada, you see violent episodes when you build mountains, and then there are quiet episodes when seas cover much of Canada. So think about modern reefs in the Caribbean with beautiful, nice, clear aquamarine waters. And that covered huge areas of Canada at one time. And that's because there was no mountain building going on. It was quiet tectonically. The Niagara Escarpment and the whole part of southern Ontario records perhaps the quietest period in the history of Canada. About 400 million years ago, there were these giant inland seas that virtually covered the whole country. And there's no modern analog, there's no modern parallel anywhere in the world today.
During the Silurian period, the tectonic plate of continental North America was at lower latitudes than it is today. Geological forces caused the Michigan Basin to sink down in the middle and rise along the edges. Sea levels rose. The climate warmed. The vast shallow seas basked in sunlight and transformed this body of water into a giant incubator that sparked an explosive period in the evolution of marine life. Amazing things began to happen. Coral reefs formed. The first ever fish with cartilage skeletons appeared. Plants began to grow on land. Then, air-breathing creatures such as millipedes, centipedes, and primitive arachnids helped create the earliest terrestrial food web. This primordial ecosystem thrived for millions of years. Immeasurable numbers of marine creatures lived and died here, while rivers fed the inland sea, bringing sand, silt, and clay into the water. Coral and shells built up, along with a growing deposit of calcium. These layers began to harden. Time passed. Sand became sandstone. Clay became shale. Calcium carbonate became limestone. Magnesium in the water infiltrated layers of calcium carbonate mud, creating dolomite, a rock similar to limestone, but much harder. Layer upon layer, these dramatically different rock types built up. Water levels in this ancient sea changed frequently, as did the location of the ancient coastline. The sea slowly dried up. Then, about 200 million years ago, everything changed. These layers, built up over millions of years, formed the building blocks for the escarpment.
It's important to understand that in the sea, the layers are being laid down one on top of each other over millions of years.
Once many layers of sediment were laid down in the shallow inland Silurian Sea, the warping of the basin elevated the sediments above water to expose the edge of the basin as an escarpment.
So you've got an edge that's now exposed. And those top layers, which were composed, remember, of life like reefs and all those living organisms, formed in conditions that had a lot of magnesium. So it's not just calcium carbonate, which is limestone. It's calcium carbonate with a secret ingredient, magnesium. So it's calcium magnesium carbonate, which is much harder. So those top plates in that basin are hard rock, really hard rock compared to the softer ones below.
With the inland sea gone, further geological shifting occurred in the region. The edge of the Michigan Basin began to lift, marking the first physical statement of the Niagara Escarpment as we know it today. Over millions of years, natural erosion wore down the landscape, obliterating softer layers of sandstone and shale. But dolomite is significantly harder. So hard that not even the weathering power of time can penetrate it. For 200 million years, dolomite shielded the softer rock from earth-shaking events. But there was one force in nature it could not withstand: ice. Unimaginably vast ice sheets crept down to the Michigan Basin.
In many ways, it's the events of the last 2 million years, in other words, quite recent to a geologist, which have been the most profound because it's seen the repeated development of ice sheets, which, you know, we're not talking about something in a hockey arena, we're talking about ice sheets that are 3 or 4 kilometers thick. And they're moving and they're dragging debris at their base. So they're very, very effective agents of erosion. And all the main lakes in Canada that lie around the edge of the shield, including the Great Lakes, have all been dug out basically by ice sheets. So the last 5 minutes, if you like, of the geologic history have been the most profound in terms of how they've affected the landscape in Canada.
For 2.5 million years, these monstrous sheets of ice gave the region an epic pounding.
From about 1 million years to 10,000 years ago was our last glacial period, and we had 4 successive glaciers across this landscape, so the last one leaving about 10,000 years ago. So here again, this landscape, which we had the escarpment, but then you've got 3.5 kilometers thick of ice. And so there's a lot of weight and a lot of plowing, a lot of pushing with the force behind that, the weight of that ice. And also at the base of the ice, you have boulders and some rocks the sizes of houses. The grit of that base is very aggressive. So you've got this monumental scouring pad that's scraping across the landscape as well. And it's shaped. In some areas you can see the corrugated nature of it, where it's just kind of plowed and found weaknesses it's able to dig out. In other areas where it's like someone was playing with it and scraping it all around and shaping it. So it's clearly being manipulated by the glaciers.
Over the next few thousand years, glaciers that conquered the land began their retreat. The giants were melting. Water, frozen in time for thousands of years, pooled at the feet of the glaciers. One by one, ice dams burst under the weight of the rising water. Temperatures increased, unleashing violent floods onto the surrounding land. And finally, the Great Lakes region was freed from its frozen oppressor. With the weight of its icy burden lifted, the Niagara Escarpment continued to rise.
That's a tremendous amount of weight on top of the landscape. And when the glaciers retreated, taking that weight off, it's like pulling your finger out of a wet sponge. It slowly springs back. And that rebound, it's known as isostatic rebound, that has occurred on the landscape here. It's even happening now. We're actually rebounding at about 30 centimeters a century. And we probably have about another 40 meters to go in southwest Ontario to fully recover from the glaciers.
The epic geological history of this place is now interwoven with its ecosystem. In most areas of the escarpment, water bleeds through the rock, quenching ancient cedar trees, some nearly 2,000 years old, that cling precariously to the bluffs. Both humans and wolves used these cliffs as a lookout for massive herds of caribou, which ranged much farther south during colder times. There are signs that humans inhabited these rocks more than 13,000 years ago. The escarpment is dotted with ancient settlements, villages, and campsites. Many of these histories are long forgotten. But here on the Bruce Peninsula, the lore of some First Nations peoples has endured.
This is part of the traditional homeland of the Saugeen First Nations. This is an alliance of two First Nations, the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation and the Saugeen First Nation. This is part of their traditional homeland. And this area then became part of the province of Canada in 1854. And that's when the name was changed from Saugeen Niashing or Saugeen Peninsula, Indian Peninsula, to Bruce Peninsula. And that was done to honor James Bruce, who was Canada's Governor General at that time.
Tribes of First Nations peoples have lived along the escarpment for thousands of years. For them, some of the amazing rock formations are sacred sites. Some Indigenous people have strong spiritual beliefs, intrinsically connected to the landscape. This interweaving of spirituality and geology has been coined geomythology. It is the study of oral traditions created by pre-scientific cultures to explain geological phenomena.
My focus has always been the stories, and being able to work here in Bruce Peninsula National Park, I've then had the opportunity to take my people's traditional stories and connect these stories to the current geological research.
One of the most striking stories is the legend of Standing Rock. For the Huron First Nation, the afterlife was referred to as the path to the village of souls. This pathway was marked by a rock called the Watcher. Here, the deceased waited for their turn to walk through a door and into the underworld, the village of souls. According to legend, to gain entry into the village of souls, the dead were required to enter a cabin where a man named Piercehead waited. As the dead souls entered, Piercehead cracked their skulls open, pulled out their brains, and kept them for himself. A macabre tale. But it was believed that, as a rite of passage to the afterlife, the brains of the dead needed to be removed as an act of mercy, so they could not bring their memories to the afterlife or yearn for their past lives. This rock and these caves are physical representations of this mythology. To this day, the Standing Rock is a haunting sight. It appears to change its appearance depending on lighting and vantage point. Because of this, it is thought that the First Nations people here saw it as both the Watcher and the Head Piercer. The cracks and fissures leading down to the rock might have been thought of as the meeting place of the upper, middle, and lower worlds. The varying rates of erosion of the dramatically different rock types here are one natural contributor to these unique formations. But there is another cause: winter.
What ends up happening is water is continuously kind of seeping through the rock from high up on the cliffs. This limestone is full of fissures and tunnels and different cracks and crevices where water is continuously seeping into the cracks. As the water freezes in the fall and onwards to the winter time, that ice expands, and over time that thawing and freezing of that water in those cracks and those fissures has the effect of breaking apart and crumbling apart the cliff face. And over time, of course, that rock breaks free and crashes down on the shoreline below. Now, the result of this is that you get everything from smaller plate-sized rocks that are a little bit challenging to walk on, but sometimes you get these really incredible sized boulders.
Imposing as it may seem, the escarpment is actually being pushed back, eroded bit by bit, by waves and weather from the outside and freeze and thaw from the inside. While it is hard to imagine that it will one day be gone, the effects of time are precisely what make it so compelling. Six and a half kilometers off the coast of the Bruce Peninsula sits one of the Niagara Escarpment's most remarkable sights. This is Flowerpot Island. These columns of rock were once part of the cliff face. Over millions of years, softer rock of the escarpment crumbled away, eroded by wind and rain, ice, and pounding waves. Only the harder rock remained in the shape of flower pots. This extraordinary landmark of the escarpment is located in Fathom 5 National Marine Park. It is accessible only by boat and is a haven for hikers and explorers. The flower pots are each about 18 meters high. There was a third flower pot until it collapsed in 1903. Someday, time will claim the remaining two. But until then, their hard dolomite caps will endure. The powers of the elements here are merciless. They carve and shape all parts of the Niagara Escarpment, leaving incredible rock formations in their wake. Just south of Flowerpot Island is Indian Head Cove. Overlooking the cove is Overhanging Point.
The top layer, the cap rock, is dolomite, which is much more resistant to erosion versus the softer material which is underneath. And you can see it's like plates. So the hard rock is just hanging out there as it's slowly being undercut.
As you're walking up above on the cliff, there's an opportunity where there's a bit of a rock that comes right out, and it gives you the opportunity to kind of stand out on that point and get almost a 180-degree sweep of the water and the area around you. It's really quite impressive. Some of these incredible landscapes have a credible effect on people When you stand out on the cliff edge and you're looking over these vistas, you can't help but feel tiny. You can't help but feel small. And at the same time, it really fills you up with, you know, with all the good stuff. You feel better, you feel healthier, you feel like you can, you know, go back and you're full of energy, and it's a really nice place to be and to visit.
Just underneath the overhang is a view that is equally compelling, but very different, because it allows you to look back in time.
Millions of years ago, that high cliff face now was actually right at sea level, and the waves of the water at the time were working away at that rock face and really chiseling it out and carving it out. What a lot of visitors will do is they'll actually hike down underneath the cliff top, and what they find is a pretty remarkable geological formation where the rock has been carved or cut out over time from all the different forces of erosion and wave action.
The opportunity to stand inside a natural structure created millions of years ago is one taken by more visitors each year.
Here you have, within a 3 to 4 hour drive, large urban centers, and within 20 minutes from the parking lot, you can find yourself completely alone in this amazing, spectacular area with these sweeping vistas of these cliffs and this Georgian Bay water and this pristine landscape, and it's pretty incredible to have that accessibility in such a short distance from major urban centers. If we were to go back 10 years, we'd be looking at our visitation in the park here, which would be around 150,000 visitors a year. What we've seen in the last 8 years is a meteoric rise in visitation. We're to the point where now in Bruce Peninsula National Park, we're getting about 300,000 visitors a year. When you combine that with Fathom 5, the number is roughly up around 500,000.
For visitors to Bruce Peninsula National Park to get the full experience, they need to go beyond dry land and be prepared to get wet. This is the Grotto.
The escarpment here is very striking. There aren't too many areas south of the Bruce Peninsula where you can see these sea caves, the sinkholes, some of the different features. So the landscape here is really quite dramatic.
The grotto is an example of a feature that was formed by wave action. Waves beating against the shoreline was able to erode out and create the grotto. You can see areas, that popcorny looking rock, that's evidence of an old reef. So that's rock, so 450 million years ago during the Silurian period, there was reefs there.
For geologists, the grotto is yet another marvelous puzzle piece, used to uncover the vast geological history here. For the ancient humans who lived off this land for thousands of years, it provided shelter along the coast. Today, for hikers and divers alike, it's an experience of a lifetime.
The grotto, it's cool. It's a sea cave. The shoreline has lots of sea caves, but the grotto is different because it also has the obvious entrance that people scramble down to, and that's an experience. If you feel rewarded when you get down, and actually even more rewarded when you get back out. But there's also an underwater entrance where light can come through, and it creates a bit of a hue in there, and it's because light from the outside. So divers know there's that entrance, and they come through there. So you have these two entrances, and it's just in a remarkable location. It's a nice place to visit.
For new visitors, one of the most surprising aspects of this place is the water. In this part of the world, this far north, crystal clear turquoise water is not a common sight.
When you look at the water, it's remarkable. You feel it could be Mediterranean and Caribbean. It's just this crystal clear or gin clear water. You can see down 20 meters, 30 meters, 40 meters actually, to the bottom. And in simple terms, water, H2O, is a blue chemical. So pure water is a clear bluish chemical. So what you're looking at is water almost in its purest form. There is very little other stuff in it. So there's very other little, let's say silt, which is going to change the color of it and change how far light can penetrate. Or life like algae, like phytoplankton. So if the more stuff that's in the water, it's going to affect its color, it's going to affect how far light can penetrate.
Under normal circumstances, fresh water in this region wouldn't look this way. But there is a unique combination of factors at play here. This water has been filtered.
Zebra and quagga mussels, which are an invasive species that have colonized the Great Lakes, have drawn so much nutrients and energy to the lake bottom, to themselves, that the lake is less productive. So in the springtime, this area would have had a large algal bloom, diatom bloom, that would have affected the water clarity. We wouldn't be able to see as much. But we're not getting those large algal blooms, so our water clarity in the springtime is even more clear than it historically was. And that's a shift. It's a shift in the whole food web and the dynamics of the lake.
Not surprisingly, these waters offer some of the best snorkeling and scuba diving in North America. The water offers incredible visibility. The submerged rock formations in the lake are just as beautiful as those on dry land. And there are shipwrecks. There are hundreds of shipwrecks in the Great Lakes, some as shallow as 3 to 6 meters below the surface. The number of shipwrecks here might surprise some, but the Great Lakes waterway is a busy shipping route that runs all the way to the Atlantic Ocean and is subject to powerful storms. The shipwrecks along this part of the escarpment are among the best in the world for underwater explorers.
Our visitors, even if they don't have any experience snorkeling or scuba diving, can relatively easily get out to these shipwrecks and go for a swim and experience them and see them. But again, that clear water, makes for an incredible diving experience.
These shipwrecks are protected by Canada's national parks and by the gentle fresh water in which they rest. Salt water is not so forgiving. Sea worms in the ocean bore into and eventually destroy shipwrecks. But not here. The rarity of this level of preservation is a big draw for divers. Ships frozen in time help make this one of the top freshwater diving locations in the world. For the advanced diver, a deeper look can bring you much farther back in time. Between 5,000 and 10,000 years ago, before the glaciers fully melted, dry land, rivers, and massive waterfalls connected the Bruce Peninsula with Manitoulin Island, some 80 kilometers north.
If we were to take away the water, it looks like what a river or a fall system would look like today. It's still quite evident on the lake bottom. And that continues on down 90 meters deep. And that's just to the surface of the sediment. Keep in mind that bedrock is actually probably another 100 meters below that.
Melted glacial water from Lake Huron drained into Georgian Bay down a giant prehistoric waterfall. Its roar was so loud, it's estimated that it could be heard more than 15 kilometers away. But the glaciers continued to melt. Water levels at the base of the falls rose. The Great Lakes as we know them came to be. And this ancient waterfall, large enough to rival even Niagara Falls, became completely submerged. For visitors to the Niagara Escarpment who prefer staying above the water line, there are still waterfalls that have not been claimed by the great glacial melt. This is Inglis Falls, a stunning waterfall, a gentle cascade, an 18-meter brushstroke, left behind by time and erosion. This is where the Sydenham River meets the Niagara Escarpment, along the Bruce Trail near Owen Sound, Ontario. Here, water seeps through the dolomite cap rock and slowly erodes the softer rock underneath. Through the ages, hunks of dolomite lose their support and tumble down, bit by bit. It's a process called spring sapping, and Inglis Falls is the stunning result. The falls are part of the region recognized by the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization as a World Biosphere Reserve.
UNESCO's World Biosphere Reserve concept or idea is about 40 years old now. And it tries to promote and recognize the ideals of conservation. There's lots of change happening on the landscape. And I can't help but think of the foresight of those individuals who envisioned the importance of this corridor. I'm not sure if it weren't for those protective measures, whether we'd be standing here or somebody would be telling us to get off their property. But the fact is, anyone can come and experience this firsthand, can develop their own connection to this place and see the importance of it firsthand. People have a connection to this area because it's authentic. It's a real place. We haven't manufactured a theme park. This is a real place where you can get cold and wet and stub your toe on rocks, and you can swim and climb up cliffs. You can see trees, you can hear birds. It's real.
The peninsula has always drawn people here. And for the native people, this is where they hunted, this is where they harvested for food and for medicine. They fished out in these waters, and they actually still do that to this very day. I think for all people, it's the sheer beauty of this place helps them or draws them, brings them, and keeps them connected to the peninsula so that they keep coming back again and again and again. Taking a group of school children out to Indian Head Cove and the Grotto and coming out onto the shoreline and hearing them say, wow. That's what makes me feel good. And for me, it's always a blessed day when I can take a group of school children out and show them this place.
It's a moving experience. It moves you. You feel something. I was speaking with a colleague who took some visitors out in the escarpment, and one of the women on their tour, who was from overseas, broke down and started crying. And he couldn't understand what was wrong, and he went to her and he said, you know, is everything okay? What can I do? And she was so overwhelmed with the vastness of this space, the water and the vastness and the size and the scope of the escarpment, that it moved her to tears. That's something, I mean, that's special.
Here on the Niagara Escarpment, the stillness can be beautiful, spiritual, and chilling all at once. born at sea, scored by ice, ground down by time. It is forever a work in progress, an unresolved geological masterpiece.